Hello, time for another Man in Great book review. Today's book is Knife Meditations After an Attempted Murder by Salman Rushdie. This book was published in 2024 by Random House. It's 210 pages. Salman Rushdie is an Indian-born British novelist. In 1988, Rushdie published a satirical novel called The Satanic Verses, which poked fun at some aspects of Islamic culture. The spiritual leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khomeini, took exception to the book and issued a public fatwa where he called on fellow Muslims to murder Rushdie because of the book that he had published. This was an extraordinary moment in cultural history, a leader of a major sovereign nation calling for the murder of a writer simply because he didn't like the thing the writer was saying. Rushdie went into hiding for over a decade. He had round-the-clock police protection from the British police force. And at the very time that this book came out, he was going through a divorce. So he had to deal with his personal crisis at the same time he was fearing for his life. But after about a decade, after Khomeini's death, and a decade went by, the hoopla over the Satanic Verses died down, and Rushdie decided that he could come out of hiding. He moved to New York City, began appearing in public, although usually with some kind of personal bodyguard protection. And he resumed writing. His third marriage fell apart during this time, but he met another woman, a woman 30 years younger than him, the poet and photographer Rachel Eliza Griffiths. And they get married, and it looks like everything's going well. He's about to publish a new novel, and then in 2022, he gets an offer to go to attend a literary conference in upstate New York. Ironically, the conference was about the need to protect writers from various threats. And he decides to go to this conference because he needed the money to repair his air conditioning system in his house. He had to replace the aging air conditioning system, and the paycheck for this conference would pay for that. So he leaves his wife behind and goes to this conference. And on August 12th, 2022, he was standing on the stage of an amphitheater, or actually was sitting, and he was about to give a speech when a young man clad in black leaped onto the stage. Turns out this young man was a guy from New Jersey who had become radicalized, become a jihadist after watching YouTube videos. The guy pulled out a knife and began stabbing Rushdie, and he stabbed him 15 times before members of the crowd finally pulled him away and disarmed him. Rushdie was stabbed in the eye, blinding him. He was stabbed several times in the neck and in the chest, puncturing his liver, and he was also stabbed in the stomach, damaging his intestine, and in his hand, which severed all the tendons in his right hand. He was rushed to a hospital and hovered between life and death for several days. When his wife arrived, one of the doctors told her, quite frankly, he didn't think that Rushdie was going to pull through. But he did pull through. And this book is an account of the year he spent recovering from his various injuries and the experiences he had as a result of his near fatal attack from this fanatical Muslim. Rushdie's fictional works, his novels, tend toward magic realism. There's a lot of symbolism and dense writing, but this is written in a very straightforward journalistic style. Sometimes the detail is quite graphic. His descriptions of his surgeries and his injuries to his eyes can be rather stomach-churning to people with kind of weak stomachs. So you should be forewarned that there are some descriptions in here that are going to be tough to read. You might want to skip over them. He talks about his gratitude toward the many doctors and nurses who saved his life and the therapist who helped him regain his ability to walk and move his hand. And, of course, he pays great tribute to his wife, who was a solid rock behind him the whole time, who encouraged him, and he never gave up his belief that he could recover and resume right again. The attack also brought him closer to his adult children, who travel from England to New York to spend time with him there. So the book is actually very optimistic, kind of inspiring story about this guy who, at age 75, was attacked by a man, a third his age, and managed to survive. The book falters a little bit at the end. For some reason, Rushdie he had this obsession, fantasizing about what he would say if he met his assailant again. Now, at the time of this book's publishing and the time of this video, his assailant hasn't gone on trial. The trial, there's actually two trials. There's a state trial. He's being charged with attempted murder and assault, and then he's also facing federal terrorism charges, and both trials have been delayed, so he still hasn't come to trial yet. But Rushdie had this fantasy about what he would say if he met this guy, and so he writes a long chapter in which he imagines a series of conversations with his attacker. This runs to almost 30 pages, and it's really kind of pointless because we don't really know what this guy's motivation was. The attacker gave one a brief interview to the New York Post in which he gave vague answers as to why he attacked Rushdie. And he didn't come across as a particularly intelligent or very thoughtful person. So it puzzles me as to why Rushdie would spend such length writing about an imaginary conversation with his attempted murderer. But anyway, he did that. And then at the end of the book, he decides to go back to the scene of his attack in this amphitheater in upstate New York, and his wife kind of reluctantly agrees to go with him. And he also insists on posing for a photograph in front of the jail where his assailant is imprisoned, which doesn't please his wife very much. And then when he gets to the amphitheater, he reenacts the attack for his wife. His wife's standing there on the stage, and he shows where he fell and all this stuff. And I really wonder why he put his wife through that, and why he felt it was necessary to reenact the crime and go back to the scene of the crime after he had already recovered. But nevertheless, that's how the book ends. It ends in a kind of a hopeful way. There's also some other. It also tells the love story of his meeting Rachel Griffiths, and how they met and how they fell in love, and the great support she gave to him during the recovery. There's also some sad moments in there. His good friend, fellow novelist Martin Amis, dies during this time period, so he's grieving over the loss of his friend while trying to recover from his injuries. He also learns that his another friend of his, a fellow novelist, Paul Auster, has lung cancer. And of course, Auster died a few months ago, last year, a few months ago, after the book came out. So he's also sad for that. So he's dealing with various griefs, losses of friends while recovering from his serious injuries. So, as I mentioned before, it's written in a very straightforward journalistic style. If you recall this attack and want to learn more about it, this is an interesting book. If you're a fan of Rushdie's fiction, this book is quite different from his novels. So it's not at all anything like his kind of fantastical fiction. Anyway, I think it's a book that's certainly worth reading. And of course, one of the things that he mentions in here is that there's always been some people who, the majority of intellectuals supported Rushdie back in the 80s when the fatwa was issued by Khomeini, and then, of course, after his attack. But there have been some who criticized him, including when the Satanic Verses came out. Former President Jimmy Carter actually criticized Rushdie for writing the book and saying that he shouldn't have been criticizing Islam. And so, as he mentions in here, at various points in his career, he's lost friends because they refused to stand up for freedom of the press. In any case, it's a book I think it's well worth reading. The book is Knife, Meditations After an Attempted Murder. The author is Salman Rushdie. This has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.